Good afternoon, everybody. Right now at noon, developments in several homicides from over the weekend. We have the very latest in just a few minutes. Plus, early voting now underway for the Arkansas primaries. We're going to take a closer look at what you need to know before casting your ballot. And the ongoing debate over Roe v. Wade continues to heat up. More from both sides of that argument. And a young man who credits nurses with saving his life is now giving back by joining their ranks. That must-see Nurses Week story coming up at 12:08. But first, it is hot outside. We're starting to talk real summer heat with meteorologist Nathan Scott. What do we got coming up here in this noon?
Good afternoon, Rolly. We have gone under a weather pattern change here in the natural state. Yesterday, it was still low humidity, still comfortable. You step outside today and you can feel that Gulf of Mexico moisture has returned here to Arkansas. Look at these temperatures already, warming up to the low to mid 80s with a mixture of sun and clouds. Our highest temperature so far this year has been 85 degrees, and we're going to surpass that today. Also, a little bit on the breezy side, those winds coming in from the south-southwest, about 10 to as high as 15 or 20 miles per hour. But here's what you really notice, the dew points. We've got dew points into the upper 60s to lower 70s. That's some tropical air in place. The dew point is not 81 in Conway. That's an error with that observation site. But with the temperatures combined with the humidity, here's what it feels like out there. It feels like 85 in Stuttgart. It feels like 88 in Little Rock, and it feels like 89 in Texarkana. Today, highs soaring into the upper 80s, maybe some low 90s across the board, and that will tie a record high. This is just the start, though. More record highs are in jeopardy, and I'll have more on that potential coming up.
Nathan, thank you. New at noon, a Little Rock shooting from last month now being investigated as a homicide. Police had responded to a shooting on South Monroe Street on April 23rd. There, they found a man suffering from a gunshot wound. He went to the hospital, but he has recently died. That man now being identified as 34-year-old Frankie Kane. No word on suspects at this time. Another THV 11 update we're following. A suspect in this weekend's murder in Clarendon is in custody. 20-year-old Christian Franks surrendered to Arkansas State Police this morning. He's charged with capital murder in the death of 26-year-old Lily Smith, who had been found dead in a home on Saturday. And this afternoon, we're working to learn more about a deadly weekend shooting in Pine Bluff. Police tell us a family dispute at a park turned violent Saturday night, with 4 people shot, including an 18 and an 11-year-old. The 18-year-old died at the hospital. Police have arrested 20-year-old Clifton Westmoreland on 3 counts of first-degree battery, but there are still a lot of questions about what went on. We have a crew looking for answers, and we'll have more tonight at 5 and 6. Now just 2 weeks away from the Arkansas primary election, which means early voting is underway today. And because THV 11 is your election central, we've got everything you need to know. Early voting kicked off at 8 this morning. It runs until May 23rd. That's the day before Election Day. During the week, you can vote between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. On Saturdays, early voting goes from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. If you have any questions about early voting or where to cast your ballot during this period, reach out to your county's election officials. Now, when it comes to voting itself, there are some new laws in effect this year that you need to know about, all because the Arkansas General Assembly passed 4 laws changing the process. The first one tightens the rules requiring a photo ID to vote. Before, you could sign a form swearing that you are who you say you are. Then you could cast a provisional ballot. Well, now you got to show an ID or you won't be able to vote at all. If you don't have a driver's license, there are a number of other IDs you can use, including a voter ID card, concealed carry license, a passport, and a handful of other things. The second law enforces matching signatures on your absentee application and your voter registration. If a county clerk checks both and they don't match up, you won't get an absentee ballot sent to you, and you'll have to vote in person. The third new law, absentee ballot deadlines. Now, voters must turn in their absentee ballot the Friday before Election Day. You used to be able to do it right up until 1 day before each election. And finally, there's a new rule banning non-voters from coming within 100 feet of polling locations. It's to prevent electioneering or campaigning so close to the polls, but critics say it keeps volunteers from doing things like handing out free water to voters waiting on a long line. Now, some of the biggest races getting national attention is Arkansas's governor primary. This afternoon, we're getting an idea of how things should shake out come 2 weeks from now. According to a new survey from Talk Business and Politics and Hendrix College, Sarah Huckabee Sanders has a strong lead in the Republican race, with 72% saying they plan on voting for the former White House press secretary. On the other side, close to 60% of Democratic voters say Chris Jones is their pick. If that holds, both would avoid a runoff election. We are turning now to the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned. Over the weekend, protesters gathered and tensions continue to rise across the country. A new CBS News poll shows nearly 2/3 of Americans want Roe v. Wade to be kept in place and abortion rights preserved. 36% disagree. Scott McFarland's on Capitol Hill. He has more on how some Democrats are now trying to shift this argument from the courts to Congress.
After a weekend of protests outside the Supreme Court, outside churches, and even at the homes of some of the High Court's justices, the abortion debate shifts to the U.S. Senate later today as Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer begins the proceedings ahead of a Wednesday vote to codify abortion rights into law.
Every American will see how every senator stands. They can't duck it anymore.
A bill is already passed in the U.S. House, but has no clear path to the 60 votes needed in the U.S. Senate.
He calls it a bill to codify Roe versus Wade, but that's not, in fact, what the bill does. It is a radical abortion bill, which sadly reflects where today's Democrats are.
In a weekend interview with USA Today, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said it's possible legislators could see a nationwide ban on abortion if the court overturns Roe versus Wade and if Republicans win control of Congress. But in new CBS News polling, 2/3 of women under 50 said overturning Roe could lead to more restrictions on contraceptives.
Rise up for abortion rights.
A concerned Speaker Nancy Pelosi expressed on Face the Nation.
This is about respect for privacy. What's next? What's next?
Despite the protests that were seen over the weekend, there are political analysts and candidates who say this may not be the swing issue ahead of the midterm elections in an election cycle that so far has been defined by inflation, including gas and food prices. This week and this debate could change that. Scott McFarland, CBS News, the Capitol.
Governor Asa Hutchinson joining that debate over the weekend, saying he would oppose a national ban on abortions. He spoke on ABC's This Morning following the leak of that Supreme Court draft, and with thoughts of his own presidential bid in the air. Arkansas is one of 13 states with a trigger law in place that would immediately make abortion illegal. The governor says he expects one particular part of the debate to ramp up.
I would prefer the rape and incest exceptions to be in there. And even though we have the trigger law, I expect those exceptions to be a significant part of the debate in the future.
That trigger law the governor mentioned would immediately make abortion illegal. Arkansas, one of 13 with the law on the books. Well, it's National Nurses Week, recognizing the crucial role of millions of nurses across the country, especially meaningful for one young man who says his nurses helped him survive cancer and, as Bradley Blackburn shows us, gave him a new mission for his future.
When Maxwell Jones was just 19 years old, he got a medical diagnosis he never expected: acute lymphoblastic leukemia.
The first time my doctor sat me down and said, "Look, I think you have leukemia," I just said, "I got this."
He started treatment at Advent Health's pediatric oncology unit in Orlando, and Max's freshman year of college came to a halt. He had already been considering a career in nursing.
I've always just had this feeling inside that I want to care for people.
So Max decided to learn everything he could from the nurses caring for him, especially Nurse Delaney Postma.
He was always asking, "Hey, what are you doing? Can you teach me how to do this?"
Delaney, from the beginning, I always knew that something was really special about her.
Delaney and his other nurses cheered him on through a bone marrow transplant. Now 23, Max is cancer-free and studying nursing at the University of Central Florida.
Good morning.
Recently, he returned to his old pediatric oncology ward, this time for training as a student.
He was here one day.
With my experiences with my nurses and in the ward, I changed my mind and wanted to go into children's oncology.
He also got a surprise visit from Delaney.
Delaney, how do you think Max is going to do as a nurse?
Oh, he's going to do fantastic. I have no doubt in my mind.
There's always something that I can bring back that they taught me or talked about. And I think I'll carry that throughout my entire career.
Mentorships that have changed his life with the nurses who helped save it. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
The American Nurses Association says that there are more than 4 million RNs in the U.S. today. Well, a Virginia teen is bringing new attention to women who are often left out of history books. We're showing you how she's doing it, still ahead at 12:17. And Nathan?
Rolly, you can see it from Dash R View 11. The visibility not as good as what we have seen in the past, and that's because not only the pollen's floating around, but also there's a lot more moisture in the atmosphere, a lot more humidity. Summertime has arrived here in Arkansas, and I'll let you know how high the mercury will climb next.